Hello and welcome back to the Birdcage. A little bit of a summer episode. I'm joined alongside Sam Winton and James Madden, two of my good buddies who talk and know a ton of ball. Let's get into well, you guys haven't been on in a while, right? And since the spring, back when Kansas basketball was in full swing. So I think it's only right if we start by talking about the end of last season and last season in the whole. Sam, you and James were tapped in really quite a bit with this Kansas team. I'll let you start first. What were your overall opinions on last season and how the season ended?
Yeah, I mean, again, just another huge disappointment as we've kind of seen and grown accustomed to in the recent years, unfortunately. Again, it was just a roster that kind of just didn't fit. You bring back a core that, had some issues and you don't do enough in the transfer portal and you miss out on some guys or you miss hit on some guys, right? Guys who really underperformed. And it was just kind of a team that when you saw them play, just it never really clicked. They end up getting bounced by an Arkansas team that, wasn't bad, but probably a game that Kansas should have won. And, it's just first round exits at Kansas aren't really a thing. It hasn't happened in a long time. So I think Kansas did enough in the offseason to bring them back into, maybe a team that isn't going to get that preseason number one ranking, but a team that I think at least meshes a lot better together.
And we'll talk about that later because this offseason is a lot different from the previous years, which some could argue that can be a good thing. So we'll touch on that later. James, what were your overall opinions on the Kansas basketball season a year ago?
Yeah, like Sam said, that they kind of had the team kind of always had a weird vibe to it, and we talked about early in the season how good their transfer portal class was. AJ Storr came in, Zeke Mayo came in, and Zeke I thought actually played really well for them. It's just he played a much bigger role at a higher level than he's ever played, and he really took the Kansas letters and the Kansas colors in pride, being a Lawrence kid and having grown up going to games, watching games. So I knew he would be kind of a guy that no matter the situation would always give it his 100%. But that's, I think, the issue with Kansas last year because, and it's not even just a Kansas thing. You see it with almost every program in America is the transfer portal is so prevalent that you don't really find that team camaraderie. You don't really find that, team feeling all that much. And that's kind of what something that Bill Self has built this Kansas program on. Guys like KJ Adams, who spent 4 years in Lawrence, DeJuan Harris, who spent 4 years, even going back to those teams with, Ochai and Grady Dick, and even before that, when they won national titles and competed at the highest level, you just didn't really feel that with last year's team because of, and it's not like a Bill. I don't think it's a Bill Self problem. It's just kind of the new landscape of college basketball. And we saw this year, I think they only have three transfers coming in and three freshmen coming in as well. So it's kind of steered away from that whole, try and win the transfer portal thing and trust your freshmen that are coming in. Trust the guys who get back from injury and redshirt like Jamari McDowell and El Marco and then we obviously have a special freshman coming in Darren Peterson, who I think everyone in Lawrence is stoked to see on opening night in November. So it'll be an interesting season. Hopefully, maybe a much better season than last year. And it's funny, we talk about how Kansas lost in the first round, but that's a great season for most programs, but that's not going to really cut it if you're KU and you're Bill Self.
That's very true. Most programs would be thrilled to make the tournament, but that's not really the expectation at Kansas. Now, I didn't do you guys a favor in the introduction. Usually I list off all of your guys' accomplishments. So let me do that real quick. Sam, if I'm not mistaken, you still work for the Slant, doing a lot of things, football, basketball
Yes, yes,
wise.
that is correct.
A lot of great things, I may add.
Thank
Very
you.
fun reads. If you guys are Kansas Jayhawks supporters, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Slant because it's just good content and informative content on your favorite Kansas athletic teams. And then, James, you picked up a little bit of a summer gig, or you announced it going into the summer. You now work for Zags Blogs. Talk about how you got that opportunity and what you've been doing and what your favorite part has been so far.
Yeah, I've mostly just been covering high school recruiting and college basketball. Whether it's mostly, I mean, it's kind of we're at the slower part of the college basketball news cycle. So the transfer portal's kind of over. Most schedules are already set, but it's mostly just college basketball wise, just covering transfers and who commits where, which coaches sign extensions. That's really been what kind of has been busy in the summer. And then when a team drops a schedule, you have a big game announced. Like, I don't know, Kansas is all the players era games. Kansas, I think they're playing Notre Dame, and can't remember the other team. So just kind of, and then
Syracuse.
Syracuse. That's
Very
what I thought it was too.
very poor games in my opinion.
Well, there's
When
so
you
many
look at
teams
when you
that
look at the teams in the Players Era tournament, I'm kind of bummed that Notre Dame and Syracuse were the two teams that Kansas kind of got matched up against, but I don't
I'd
know,
say those are
maybe you guys disagree.
two winnable games. I'd say you got to get
Yeah.
both wins in Vegas though. But we've just been covering, and I cover also high school basketball for them, and just like recruiting news, whether it's guys announcing their commitments, cutting lists, updating their recruitment about if they'll take visits and whatnot. So just anything about the future stars and the current stars of college basketball, and just trying to connect and meet as many people as I can. So it's been a very fun gig with Adam, Sam Lance, Alejandro Lopez, all the guys. So they've welcomed me. And it's been a lot of fun just writing about the stuff that I've followed and covered for the better part of the last 5 years. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, awesome stuff, you guys, and I'm really happy that you guys are able to join me for this. Obviously, you guys are two of my favorite people to talk about college basketball with, and ever this is the first time ever we're trying to do a three-man podcast. So this is no one else I
We're
would
here for
rather do it
history.
with. This is going to be pretty fun. Let's get right into it. The first topic we're discussing this offseason are the winners and the losers of the transfer portal. Now, we talked before about similar teams because there are some teams that really hit in the transfer portal, teams that we'll talk about, Michigan, St. John's probably. But then there are some teams that missed completely, teams that went away from getting their guys, getting stars like Kansas did this past offseason, and teams that just really had no direction in the transfer portal. And that's where I'm kind of getting from. I want to hear your guys's. Let's start with losers first. What are some teams that you guys think really just lost the portal this year?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I think one of the bigger losers, just because of the amount of guys that they lost and the amount of impactful guys that they lost, was North Carolina. I mean, you look at all their transfers, it was six rotational players for Hubert Davis's club last year. And I mean, Jalen Withers, the biggest one obviously being Ian Jackson, who went to St. John's. Like that was a program changing type of talent that they end up losing. Elliot Cadeau was a starter, did a really good job in their backcourt. Jalen Washington in and out of the starting lineup, same with Ben Allen Lubin. And then two more rotational players in Kate Tyson and Jalen Withers. And UNC did a good enough job of adding, I think Jaren Stevenson, Henry Visar, Kyan Evans are really good ads, but they lost a lot and they're going to be reliant on a lot of freshman talent, I think. But, losing a lot of guys who can make big impacts in another year in the program.
James, what do you
Yeah, and
got?
I'm kind of in a similar direction as Sam. Obviously, it's not the same. It's not a program with the same pedigree as North Carolina. But I'm going to go UCF. And when you look at UCF's off season, it's a very strange one. They're bringing in 12 players. That's because they lost 12 players. And just when you scroll down the list of the guys that they're bringing in, some of them were good mid-major talents. Riley Kugel's a guy. There was a high major guy. Obviously, some Kansas fans are probably very familiar with him. Jordan Burks at Georgetown, Chris Parker at Villanova. But those are kind of their headline guys. And like in a Big 12 that's really become arguably the best conference in college basketball, I just don't see a way where this UCF team is going to be able to compete, not even like to be an average Big 12 team, but just even, I think they're just going to really struggle in Big 12 play with a lineup like this because I just don't think they have the star power. Like they lost every single real big rotation piece last year. Jordan Ivy Curry, he's in the transfer portal. I think he actually ended up taking professional route. Keyshawn Hall, who was arguably one of the best scorers in the Big 12 last year, I think came into Allen Fieldhouse and had 33 points. He's over to Auburn, which is a fun move in the SEC and for Bruce Pearl. But I think UCF, I'm interested to see how Johnny Dawkins, in what seems to be like maybe one of his big years, because he's been on the hot seat for a few years now. And ever since that Taco Fall season, UCF really hasn't had much going on. So I'm interested to see how Johnny Dawkins fares with a pretty much completely revamped roster, losing 12 guys, bringing in 12 new ones. But I think UCF might struggle because we've seen teams with brand new rosters just not pan out. And I think that might be the case for UCF this season.
Yeah, I have a few losers, and we can kind of talk about them in different ways. The first loser, I think, is Baylor. Baylor lost Rob Wright to BYU and then proceeded to lose their entire roster. So they had to find a way to put together a competitive roster for the Big 12. And granted, we haven't seen what that's going to look like yet, but that's just a tough ask for anybody. Scott Drew won his national championship, and what year was that? 2021. So it's 5 years, 4 years removed from that national championship, and now I feel like Scott Drew does have something to prove. So I am excited to see what Baylor could do, but I do think that they are one of the losers in this transfer portal class just because of how much they lost. Now, I also think that Kansas is a loser. We'll talk about them a lot later. We're going to keep it brief on Kansas. I was not impressed with what they did in the portal. I was kind of confused by some of the moves they made. However, the past 2 years, they've brought in very talented transfer classes, and it hasn't worked. So maybe I'm jumping the gun because I do think that this Kansas basketball team can be very, very good next year. And the last loser is not a team, it is a player, and it is PJ Haggerty from Memphis. What are you doing? What are you doing? He hits the transfer portal, asks for a ridiculous fee, and ends up at Kansas State. What are we doing? It's an insane move. It's a move that I called when he hit the portal because who is going to pay this man a boatload of money to play? And he's the best shooting guard in college basketball. That's how it is. He's that talented. But he had this fee that no team was willing to pay because he entered the transfer portal so late. Every team already had money in different areas, and he winds up at Kansas State. He's a loser in the transfer portal. He's a big loser in the transfer portal, and there's no way around it. What are your guys' opinions on that? Because that PJ Haggerty thing I was baffled.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's like every high major program in the country would have wanted to take that guy in, but then he's asking for whatever it was, 4 million or something like
Yeah,
that.
4.5.
Yeah.
You're
I know
just
he was linked to NC State for a while, who I'm going to talk about in a minute as a winner in the transfer portal. But like, yeah, I mean, all for a guy trying to chase the bag, I guess. I mean, you can't hate on that. But when you end up at Kansas State compared to a team that really could have been a contender and really, his addition to a program like that would have elevated them so much more. Kansas State, I think, is a team that'll contend for an NCAA tournament bid. But I mean, it's not a team that's going to win the national title. It's not a team that's probably going to make a deep run in March. So it is a little bit confusing for a player of that caliber.
And it's funny you said that, Jack, because I actually had Kansas State as one of my winners, and I knew that might throw some Kansas fans in for a frenzy. But I just thought that pickup for PJ Haggerty was such a big one because, like Sam said, he's probably the best shooting guard in college basketball, and I think he kind of had a negative rep at a certain point after the tournament because he kind of had that stinker of a game against Colorado State where he couldn't buy a bucket and they ended up getting upset in the first round. But that also just comes with playing for a team that really didn't have another second option outside of him. But then it ties in. I just really like what Kansas State did. And PJ Haggerty, I know we're going to see him twice this year. And let's hope he wasn't the PJ Haggerty we saw at Memphis last year. But I think it's a really good pickup for them, obviously. But we talked about how he could have probably gone anywhere in the country and he settles for that certain team in Manhattan. So it should be interesting to see. Jerome Tang is a guy that can get the best out of his players. His X's and O's have always been a little questionable, but he's a coach's coach, a player's coach, and he'll get the most out of Haggerty. And maybe he'll turn himself into an All Big 12 player. Who knows? But it'll be fun to watch PJ Haggerty take on the Jayhawks this year, and maybe add some more spice to the rivalry.
another loser before we move on is the Ohio State. And it's not because I really dislike anything that they did or really even care about anything they did. They just brought in Gabe Cupps as their very first transfer, and that is ridiculous. They're a loser in the transfer portal. Now let's move on to winners. Again, I'll let you guys start first. But the transfer portal had an abundance of winners this year. Um, let me I mean, I was just going to list off the teams that I thought were winners, and I just said that you guys could start. So you guys please take the floor right now. Tell me who you guys think won this year's transfer portal.
James, you go ahead.
All right, yeah, I'll do it. I had like a couple winners. Kansas State was one of them. I had Michigan and UConn as two of my big winners. And I only Michigan just because they picked up who I thought was the best player in the transfer portal. That's Yaxel Lendeborg. I mean, if you guys anyone paid attention to what the American Athletic Tournament last year, that dude was putting up video game numbers 30, 20, 8 blocks, 8 steals. It's stuff that shouldn't be done at the collegiate level, and he was doing it against high level opponents and brought his team all the way through the tournament. So I think Lendeborg has the potential to be not only all Big Ten player of the year. I think he could be an all first team All American. I think he's that good. And also, I really like the Merez Johnson pickup. I think Johnson is one of the few pure centers left because I think college basketball in general is kind of transformed into everyone needs to try and have a jumper, try to play outside, even if you're not a shooter, just try to stretch the floor. But Johnson will go down there and throw you around. He's not that big. It's like 6'8", 6'9", but he plays much bigger than that. And to go from Illinois to in conference rivals in Michigan will be interesting. But and also Elliot Cadeau, who might very well be the best playmaker in the country. We saw what he did at North Carolina. Him kind of jumping ship was a little surprising because of how much North Carolina liked him. I don't know what the numbers were because you have to talk about deals and whatnot nowadays. But I don't know what North Carolina paid him to what compared to what Michigan paid him. But the buzz around Ann Arbor basketball wise is very very palpable because Dusty May is a proven winner at every spot he's been and at every level he's coached, and he's bringing in a star-studded transfer portal class headlined by my favorite transfer Yaxel Lendeborg, and I think it's going to be a fun season up north for Michigan.
Yeah, I'll go with I mean I just mentioned them NC State. I think they won the offseason transfer portal before it really even started, getting Will Wade as their head coach. Obviously, had done great things at McNeese, was successful at LSU before the whole probe there, and then ended up doing things that are now legal. So I think he is in a great spot as their head coach. Their GM, Andrew Slater, is super awesome. I think he was the director of scouting for the Oklahoma City Thunder before getting the NC State job. And I mean, they've done a great job in the transfer portal, getting who I think is the best player in the portal, and Darian Williams, a guy that Kansas was at least close on getting and didn't maybe end up matching the price tag that NC State could offer. But then you look at, really getting guys who can impact the game in a lot of ways, I think is super important. Trey Holloman was a super good role player at Michigan State and can do the same thing at NC State. Same thing with Terrence Arsenault, who did really good things for Houston, and then Van Allen Lubin, who ended up, being a mainstay in North Carolina State's program. And they bring in the guys from McNeese too, who had, tournament experience, guys who are pretty accomplished. And that makes for a really good class and, super impressive. I think NC State is going to quickly turn around and become one of the powers in the ACC just because I think they're set up super great for this NIL portal rev share era with a really good GM, a really good head coach who knows how to manipulate the portal.
Yeah, you guys touched on some winners. I think NC State is going to sneakily be one of the best teams in college basketball next year. Maybe, or definitely the ACC. They're a very talented team now with a proven head coach. And then James, the team that you mentioned but didn't really talk on, the Yukon Huskies.
Oh yeah,
I'm a Big East guy, and I don't want to play Yukon.
oh
The
yeah.
last year I thought UConn was overrated. I didn't really like the Aiden Mahaney get. I didn't think he really fit what they were doing. I thought Alex Caravan couldn't lead a team. And was I right? Maybe I was. Right? Maybe I was right. However, UConn's back. You can't shut Dan Hurley up for this long, right? We had our fun last year. He. We had our fun. They're back. They got a proven guard in the transfer portal. Still can't say his first name. Silas, maybe
Silos, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, yeah.
Silas DeMary from Georgia. He's elite. He's one of the best players in the entire transfer portal. They're
He
bringing
was the
back
reason Georgia made the
Caravan.
tournament last year. Him and Asa Newell.
Exactly. They're bringing back Caravan, who didn't really have the year everyone expected him to have. And then Solo Ball, who kind of shot up out of nowhere's back. This Yukon team is going to be nasty. Led by still the best coach in college basketball, who I was really hoping would leave and go to New York, take the Knicks job, but he said no to that. I think UConn's going to be a darn scary team next year. And this team didn't really win the portal because I think they just replaced. But I do want to touch on them a little bit because I think the way that they went about it was interesting. USC. Now they lose Desmond Claude to Washington and they lose Wesley Yates to Washington. First of all, Washington, what are you doing? USC was very average last year and you decided to take their entire backcourt up to Seattle. What I don't understand really that thought process. But then what USC was able to do in the transfer portal really intrigued me. They bring in Chad Baker Mazzara, who I feel like nobody really expected to transfer from Auburn after the season that him and Auburn had last year. But then they also bring in who I think is one of the most underrated additions in the transfer portal in Rodney Rice from Maryland. I'm super excited to watch USC, and that might just be the little bit of Chad Baker Mazzara bias I have, but I think USC is going to be a very fun team to watch this year.
Yeah, I've got another one too. I mean, they just won the national title and have some dynamite additions to supplement that backcourt, especially after losing Walter Clayton. You bring in Boogie Fland from Arkansas and Xavier Lee from Princeton. That gives you a really fun potential 1-2 in the backcourt. Also, getting AJ Brown from Ohio wasn't a lot of additions, but really, really quality additions from Florida, who didn't lose a ton. They've got some of the big guys coming back, and is a team that will probably compete for another national title. Just ended up being a really good program there. Todd Golden has quickly transformed them into a powerhouse. I know James will appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I actually wore. I was festive. I wore my national championship shirt today. But no, I love what they did too. I mean, Todd Golden can recruit. He can coach. He won at San Francisco. He was part of some really good staffs at St. Mary's as an assistant. He's part of that whole Kyle Smith coaching tree that I think four of Kyle Smith's assistants coached in the NCAA tournament last year. I think Kyle Smith was the one that got left out at Stanford, but I think he'll make Stanford relevant, at least somewhat relevant compared to where they've been in the past. But going back to your USC thing, Jack, I also had them in my winners because I think Rodney Rice, he's one of the, like you said, one of the most underrated players in the draft. I mean, I've been following Rodney since he was a sophomore at DeMatha Catholic, playing with Hunter Dickinson, playing with Earl Timberlake, playing with, Judah Mintz. They had a stacked team back in the day. And that guy shoots more threes in the gym. Like he shoots more than anyone, I've ever heard of. That dude's always in the gym. He's one of the hardest workers. That's why Willard loved him so much at Maryland. He was at Virginia Tech for a bit. It just didn't work out with his playing time because, for whatever reason, he wasn't. And I thought he should have seen the floor more than he did at Virginia Tech. But I'm not going to, question Mike Young's rotations because Rodney obviously had a really good year in Maryland last year, while Virginia Tech missed the tournament. So Rodney Rice, I think he skyrocketed his stock and had obviously the best year of his career last year. And I'm really excited to see what he brings to the table out west for USC. And also Marion Dickerson. I think that dude's one of the best defenders in the country. He was part of that Robert Morris team that played Alabama really tough in the NCAA tournament. Took him kind of wire to wire. And in a game where Alabama scored 100, like Robert Morris wasn't really going to keep up. But Amarian Dickerson, you put him one-on-one with just any guard in the country, he'll defend his tail off. And I think they have some special players coming out west. And I think USC is going to have a sneakily good team come November.
You made some great points there, but let's not talk about coaching trees without mentioning the greatest head coach in probably college basketball, Greg McDermott. That coaching tree is phenomenal. And if you don't know
Well, the
what
Huss
it's
bus
like,
is
look it
on its
up.
way too.
Look it up. Alan Huss. Oh my gosh. And the Creighton Blue Jays, phenomenal offseason. It's hard to have a good offseason when you lose the greatest, second, arguably greatest player in your program's history in Ryan Kolkbrenner. And they somehow managed to do it. So phenomenal offseason from them. But I don't want to make this about the Blue Jays. Does
How
anyone
close
else?
do you think he is? How close do you think he is to Doug? Like if you had to take your pick, who do you prefer? Number one Blue Jay of all time.
It's Doug, right?
Yeah,
But it, Kolkbrenner, if he was flashy, right, this would be actually genuinely up for debate. But the
did
way
Doug
he
ever get
played was
50?
just, what'd you say?
Did he ever get 50? Because Kalkbrenner had 50 this year, right?
He had 49
Oh,
in
he
the
had
season
49. That's right.
opener. Doug, I think's career high was 45 against Providence on senior night.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Because I
cried
watched the
that senior
49
night.
game.
Of course you did.
Um,
I was
and
watching the
then
49 game too. So
I recently had to watch the Creighton Villanova game where Ethan Wragge hit like 10 3-pointers. I just had to rewatch that the other day. That made me happy. Um,
Ashworth is gone too, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
but we
I
got Blake
figured as
Harper
much.
and Josh Dix.
That's right. I
So
like Harper a lot. I think Harper can be good, and Dix was obviously tied into Kansas for a while. So
I mean, it was between
you guys
Creighton
got
and
Freeman coming in
Kansas.
too, right?
So yeah, he's injured right now. He like tore his like meniscus or something, but he'll be back for the season. So
Gotcha.
hopefully he can replay. Hopefully he's not a traffic cone because obviously the offense will be there, but if he's a traffic cone, I think our defense is not going to be very good.
Well, Iowa played like zero defense last season, so
Well, and we just literally brought in two of Iowa's best players, so it's like, maybe we're just Iowa 2.0, no defense at all, but they'll figure it out. Do any of you guys have any more winners or losers of the transfer portal, or should we migrate to Kansas basketball talk for a little bit? Oh,
we lost Sam.
we did lose Sam. That's fine.
Text says his power went out. I have no idea.
So, James, do
Yeah,
you I want your opinion on this Kansas basketball team while we wait for Sam because he mentioned that he thinks that this team can be pretty solid. I was not impressed with what they did during the summer. It made me more and more confused. What were your opinions on how Kansas operated in the transfer portal, and then your opinions on the team overall?
yeah. I think they have an interesting group. It's like a weird. It's not the really stereotypical Bill Self team. You have Darren Peterson coming in, who I think could very well end up being the best point guard in the Big 12 the day he steps foot on campus because I think they're already on campus, but just for the sense of the.
Yeah.
But once they start the season, I think Darren Peterson. I also just think having the Darren Peterson coming in also gives the fans a sense of hope because I think without Darren Peterson, I don't know where the fan base would be at right now because coming off of three straight disappointing seasons, then really Darren Sam's back but with now Darren Peterson, he's really kind of the guy that's I think giving a lot of fans hope, rightfully so, because he's arguably I don't know what the rankings say with him and Devansa, but he's arguably the number one player in the country. And so I think, but I'm excited to see him. But I don't dislike their transfer portal class because I think they got what they needed. They got Jaden Dawson who can knock down threes, which has been a big issue for the Jayhawks the past few seasons. It's been the perimeter shooting. We thought Rylan Griffin and AJ Storr would be those guys last year, but they were just very inconsistent from beyond the arc. And then you have Melvin Council coming in, who was one of the best players in the A10. I saw him play a lot in the NEC. I think he won NEC Player of the Year when he was at Wagner, when he brought them all the way to the NCAA tournament. So, beating up on my Stonehill Skyhawks just like everyone else does. And then obviously, then you have Trey White coming in, who was originally committed to Kansas in high school, went to USC for a season, then went to Illinois the following season. And that guy, I think he has a chance. He's not going to be a huge scorer for Kansas. I think, if you get him in the 9 to 11 points per game range, I think that'll be perfect, but he'll defend. I think he'll knock down some shots. I think he had a tough year shooting last year, and he didn't put, but I think his 3-point shots there. Yeah, I don't know what his numbers were his freshman year at USC, but I don't think he played a ton. But I think Trey White will be a good pickup. I think he's familiar with the program. Obviously, he was heavily recruited by Bill Self in Kansas coming out of high school. He played at the same high school as Darren Peterson. So, there's a lot of connections there. I think it's an interesting team, but I'm really excited to see how the other two freshmen do, Bryson Tiller and Samus Calderon. I think they'll be very fun to watch. Tiller already spent this half of a season. Was it half a season? Sam would know better than I would, but with the program. But I knew he was with the program last year for a little bit. So I'm really interested to see how the three freshmen look this season, especially obviously Darren Peterson. But I think Tiller can be a lot of fun as well.
How about you, Sam? You're the big Kansas fan here. You're the big Kansas guy. Very interesting off season. Also, what happened to your connection? You kind of just left.
Yeah, my power flickered there for a second, and then it came
Oh,
back right on.
well,
Yeah,
there you go. That's
unfortunate
good.
there, but Yeah, I think Kansas really addressed fit more than getting, the best players available, which I think is really important for Kansas because they've gone for the big ticket items and, they haven't worked out. But when you look at what they've done this year, I think they've got guys who are going to be successful under Bill Self. A catch and shoot guy who's going to shoot a lot of threes and hopefully make a lot of threes, and Jaden Dawson, guy who can come off screens. Really, those set plays where Kansas is looking to get an open shot, I think they're going to look to Dawson a lot. They'll obviously look to Peterson too. Um, a guy who's going to be really strong on the defensive end. You look at guys who have been successful for Kansas. Melvin Council kind of reminds me a lot of a guy like Marcus Garrett. Obviously, he's going to take a ton of pride on the defensive end. He seems like a great teammate already, just from I had a chance to talk to him earlier in June. And he seems like a guy who's really connected with these players. He's older, so he gives you a lot of that leadership that this team doesn't really have, right? It's a pretty young team, and it's guys outside of El Marco and Jamari, really not guys who are familiar a whole lot with college basketball, whether it being, guys who spent time in other programs or, a lot of freshmen. And then you look at Trey White. Trey White at certain points can remind you of a guy like Kevin McCullough, guy who can do a lot of the dirty work. I think watching his tape, he scored off cuts a lot, which is huge for Kansas. He's not going to demand the ball in his hands, but he's going to be impactful on the offensive end. Good defender, good rebounder, another guy that Kansas is really looking for. And then I think looking at the freshmen, I mean, the obvious one is Darren Peterson. Like he's going to be all Big 12, All American type of talent. You know what you're getting in him. He's going to be this team's leader. And I think he's ready for the moment. I don't think it's going to be something that'll be too big for him. I really like the late additions of Cole Rosario and Paul Mbia. Cole Rosario is a guy, reclassified, had really shot up the recruiting boards. And I think he's going to be able to find his way into this rotation. Super athletic guard. He'll be able to shoot. He'll be able to get to the rim. He's athletic enough to learn how to play defense pretty quickly. And then Mbia really shoring up that front court depth. You obviously know what you have in Flory, but don't really know what you have in Tiller. So having another option in that front court can really help Kansas. He's a big body. He's a guy who can be a good rim protector and another rim runner, kind of in the same mold as Flory. So again, giving you some options. I think it's not super flashy, but I think it's one that can really be impactful. And originally, before the two late additions, it really looked like a head scratching off season. But I think getting Rosario and Mbia kind of shores up some of those questions, and they have a roster that I think can really compete.
Yeah, Bill Self had a plan, and whether it went to a T or not, it was interesting from a Kansas fan perspective because the past few off seasons we've seen Kansas swing for the fences. And that was sort of similar to how this off season kind of went, except they didn't hit their home run swings. I thought Keyshawn Hall was going to be a very interesting player Kansas could look at. I think they had a Zoom interview with him, and then we pretty much found out pretty quickly, hey, that's not how it's going to go. Um, we see Josh Dix. We thought Josh Dix was coming to Kansas, right?
Hmm.
Most people thought Josh Dix was coming to Kansas. He didn't. He went to Creighton. I think it's because he took a visit and then things kind of spiraled from there. But from when Josh Dix announced he was coming to Kansas, I mean, I love Creighton, and I stepped foot on Kansas and realized that this is a phenomenal place. So it was kind of one of those things where you're like, I thought Josh Dix was a surefire in for KU. And then I'm blanking on his name right now. Texas Tech guy who went to NC State.
Darian Williams.
Darian Williams. We thought
Yeah.
he was going to go to Kansas. We thought it was between Kansas or NC State, and I honestly thought it was leaning more towards Kansas until all of a sudden he commits to NC State. And so we saw Bill Self take these home run swings, and it just didn't pan out. But that's fine, because the guys that he brought in are not superstars by any means. Jaden Dawson, Trey White, Melvin Council, they're not going to lead this team. But maybe that's what we need. Because the past 2 years, it's been really clogged up, really crowded, and we're like, who's our guy? This year, we don't have that question, right? I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I'm talking like I'm a part of the team. But Kansas is lucky. I think Flory came back. And I think he was kind of in the portal just to see what his market was. I might be wrong about that. Maybe he was genuinely thinking about transferring. But we have our guy. Darren Peterson's going to be the guy who leads this Kansas basketball team. And I think all of the pieces surrounding him are the pieces that can make this team successful. The last few years have been a little underwhelming, and I do think that next year could be a little different. Let's talk about our next topic. We just got done discussing the great and mighty Kansas Jayhawks. This is buying or selling stock in ESPN's top 25 teams. So I know, have you guys taken a look at this by Jeff Borzello yet?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you guys are aware of the teams here towards the tippy top. We'll get started with it because you guys know how buy or sell works. Let's start off with the Purdue Boilermakers, who are Borzello's number one. Are we buying or are we selling? I didn't give a hold option, but if you really don't know which way to go, I guess we can hold. What are you guys thinking?
I buy Purdue. I don't know if I buy him at one, but obviously returning two of the best players in the country and Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, adding Oscar Clough, who's going to be their, next great Purdue center, as they like to do. Really good, really talented team. Fletcher Loyer comes back too. I'll buy Purdue. I don't know if I buy him at one, but very talented.
I'll also buy him as well. I tweeted it right after Florida won the title. I think it was the next day that Purdue, or actually it might have been a few weeks later because the transfer portal hadn't ramped up yet. But I said Purdue was my way too early national championship pick, and I'm going to stick by it for now. I think Braden Smith might be the best player in college basketball next year. Oscar Clough, I think, is going to be the guy, the biggest, one of maybe the best additions in the country because he's going to be playing alongside Trey Kaufman-Renn for maybe the best front court in the country. And Fletcher Loyer, if you leave that guy in space on the outside, outside the 3 point range, he's going to knock it down. And CJ Cox, one on one will lock anybody up on the defensive end of the floor. I hope CJ, he's a Massachusetts kid, so I always root for them. But I hope he can, take some big steps on his offensive side of the game and become a better offensive threat. But defensively, CJ Cox will be maybe their best front court defender, and he's playing alongside maybe the best point guard definitely the best point guard in the country, maybe the best player in the country in Braden Smith. So I like this team a lot. I think Matt Painter finally gets over that hump and maybe gets that first championship for Purdue.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it short because you guys said absolutely everything necessary about this team. Braden Smith's the best player in the country. I'm gonna buy Purdue. I also have them as my preseason national championship selection, so I'm going to stay by it. Number two is the Florida Gators. Now I'll start this time. I'm gonna sell Florida, and it's because I'm not sold that Xavier Lee is a SEC caliber basketball player. I think he's a great basketball player, but the SEC, we saw how physical in the regular season that conference was. They let a lot of things go, and Xavier Lee I saw him in person. He's not much bigger than me, and he definitely doesn't weigh as much as me. So I'm not sold that Xavier Lee is an SEC caliber player. And if you're asking him to be the number two next to Boogie Fland, who I think is an NBA player who came back to play another year of college, I think he'll be terrific. I'm just not super sold that Florida's going to have the same amount of success they had a year ago.
Yeah, I'll buy Florida just because I don't think they need Xavier and Lee to be even a superstar with just how talented and how deep this team is and the returning talent. I mean, I think Thomas Hall is going to take a huge step forward. I watching him through the NCAA tournament, just a stud. And I think being a bigger part of this team, he's going to take a huge jump. Boogie Fland, like you said, is an NBA player. Alex Condon's going to be an NBA player. Like, this is a really talented team. So I think Lee can afford going through some of the growing pains of, learning how to be an SEC player. I think they can afford that. And if he can figure it out, then it's just another added element that makes this a really scary team. So I'm buying Florida.
I'm also going to buy him just in the sense that I think they can contend for title. I don't know if I necessarily trust him yet. It's obviously really early to tell. But like you said, Boogie Fland is one of the best point guards in America. He battled some injuries his freshman year, but he was a McDonald's All-American his senior year of high school. Xavier Lee, if he can just bring, three quarters of the offensive production he had at Princeton, then he's going to be a very big part of this Florida offense. But like Sam said, Thomas Houck is going to be the guy on this team, I think. There were games in the NCAA tournament where we obviously know the whole Walter Clayton story and what he did for the Gators last year. But that Texas Tech game, they don't win without Houck. That's just I think he had 26 points, crazy shooting. He had a big block down the stretch because Tech obviously led by, I think, 9 at one point in the second half. So he just made winning play after winning play in a season where he came off the bench for the most part because of how stacked that lineup was with Elijah Martin, Will Richard, Alex Condon was starting, Chinyelu was playing, but their rotations was weird. It was because I always say I don't take much, consideration into the starting lineup who finishes the game. And Thomas Houck was out there to finish every single game. And without Thomas Houck, they don't win a national title, and it's not close. They're bounced, the third round against Texas Tech. So I think he's going to be the guy this year, like Sam said, and because of what he showed last year. And I also heard Condon's adding a little bit of muscle. Last year he was a little skinny. He kind of once he played more physical big men, he kind of struggled. But I heard he's adding some muscle this year. So that front court's going to be dangerous once again.
Yeah, sorry guys. I guess I'm just trying to be different. Number three, the Houston Cougars. Houston Cougars. Oh my gosh. I think they're the best team in the Big 12. I think that they could be on the same tier as Purdue. I'm buying them, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking into it. I think this is a good team.
Yeah, I'm buying Kelvin Sampson. I'm buying the return of Uzan Sharp and maybe the best role player in the country in JoJo Tugler, and they have two top 15 prospects. That seems like a recipe for pretty good success for Houston.
Yeah, I think the only front court they can give, a little trouble to Purdue with Clough and Kaufman-Rand might be that Tugler and Cenac front court. Cenac's raw, he's big, he's an incoming freshman, but I think he has the chance to be one of the best freshmen in America this year. He's a top 5, top 6 prospect in the NCAA and the ESPN on top 100. And I just think this Houston team's special. And Kelvin Sampson got a taste of what it's like to come, one play away from winning a national title. And a lot of these guys were on that team last year, so they're going to come back hungry. And I think they're going to be a dangerous team, and I think are the very easy, or preseason favorites to win the Big 12.
Yeah. Number four, the Yukon Huskies. I'm going to buy Yukon on the sense of they're going to have a much better season than they did a year ago. Now, I'm not super sold because, again, other than Demary, is it Demary or Damari?
I believe Silas Damari.
Silas Damari. That makes way more sense. I think he's very talented. I think Solo Ball is very talented. I don't know how that translates to winning games, especially in the Big East, but they're going to have a much better season than they will or than they did a year ago. I just don't know about if they're top 5. I think they're definitely a top 15 team in the country.
Yeah, I would agree. I think at 4, I would sell them just because it is a talented team. I really like Solo Ball. I think the Damari ad's really good. Caravan, I still have some questions about. I don't think they're gonna need him to score as much when you have guys like Damari and Ball. But like Caravan is, one of your top 2 options. I don't know. He's a really smart player. He can score in a lot of different ways, but I don't think he can really create that much. I think there are some questions in the front court. Terrace Reed was fine last year, but nothing special. And and yeah, I think it's a good team, one of the top, I'd say 15 to 20 teams in the country, but top 5, I think maybe a little steep, maybe buying into their track record or what Hurley has done recently.
Yeah, I'm with Sam. I think I'm going to sell just in the right that I don't think that they're a top 5 team. I think they're, a ranked team. I think they're a team that can go on a run because they probably have the best car in the year 2025, the best coach in college basketball. And I think Silas Damari is one of the best pickups in the transfer portal class. Like to see him improve his defense a little bit, but I think that East Coast toughness, Dan Hurley, and making his guys run stairs every day at practice might help that out a little bit. And Solo Ball, what he did last year, he took that big jump, and he was just kind of in a log jam of guards before last season, right? Tristan Newton, all those guys that were on those. Stephon Castle just won Rookie of the Year in the NBA. He was just kind of playing behind so many talented guards that were and future NBA players. So it was nice to see him kind of have that breakout year. And then you have Malachi Smith, who I think got hurt like 2 weeks ago in off-season workouts. He has a knee injury. I think they're hoping he'll be back in September. But that he's another guy you can bring off the bench and be a lockdown defending guard. So this guard core is going to be very scary in the Big East, just like Sam said. Some question marks in the front court, but I'm excited to see Jacob Furphy, brother of KU legend Johnny Furphy, take on UConn and they have an interesting freshman class. Braylon Mullins, who I think was a McDonald's All American, and then Eric Rebo, the 7 foot German center coming in. So they have a fun freshman class, and I'm excited to see how Furphy plays because obviously KU fans are very familiar with him, his family, his older brother is now, was a game away from winning an NBA title with the Pacers. So that'll be a lot of fun. But I like this UConn team. Maybe not at 4, but I think they'll be solid.
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna bring up Braylon Mullins. Your buddy John Rothstein put out a little video at UConn practice talking about how good he was. I'm excited to watch him play. Number 5 is St. John's, and I'm gonna be very blunt and honest. I'm selling this team. I'm sick and tired of Rick Pitino. I'm sick and tired of his actions. He literally had the best player in the conference begging to come back and kicked him to the curb. Now, why? I'll never know. Right? St. John's had a blunder against Arkansas in the NCAA tournament. I think it was a terrible decision to not play RJ Lewis. I think letting RJ Lewis walk was a horrific decision, and what they did, I'm not impressed. Bryce Hopkins hasn't played a game of basketball in 2 years. He's a below average 3-point shooter. I'm not sold he's going to be the same player he was at Providence. Ian Jackson, a guy who couldn't get minutes at UNC a season ago. Not sold. And then Zuby Ejiofor. Zuby's great. He's going to be the best center in the Big East next year. But I'm not sold on this St. John's team. I'm selling them.
I think there's a little Creighton bias coming in here, Jack.
No,
This is,
no bias at all. I'm selling this team.
this is a good team. I don't know, 5 may be a little steep, but you obviously are gonna buy Patino. You're buying Ejiofor's return. I mean, Bryce Hopkins, when he was healthy, was really special. There's obviously some questions about, taking pretty much an entire year off. Ian Jackson was super good for UNC last year. I don't know about not getting minutes. I
He
think
couldn't
they,
get minutes down the stretch. Hubert David didn't play him.
okay, I didn't watch UNC close enough maybe to realize that.
Oh,
They
and Bryce Hopkins sat out an entire year because he knew he was leaving and just wanted
well,
money.
yeah, yeah.
That's
This is,
illegal. That's got to be illegal.
yeah. I don't know. I will say sell at 5 because I don't. There are a lot of questions with a pretty much brand new roster. Um, but I mean, it's Rick Pitino. I think he's one of, if not, I mean, he's obviously one of. He may be the best college basketball coach of all time. So I think he'll get St. John's where they need to be. I mean, you saw it last year. That team had so many flaws, and they were able to make a run in the NCAA tournament.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm kind of with you guys. I'm on the sell bandwagon. Maybe I'm not all that impressed with this class. I think that's kind of the problem with them is they have so much pop around the city now, which rightfully so. Playing at the Garden every night, Rick Pitino in his all white suit and his mafioso type beat. But no, it's a lot of what they did last year was a lot of fun. They kind of I think they were a tad bit overrated. They kind of relied too much on that toughness, that Big East toughness, and then
they
coming down the
were
stretch,
overrated. They were
they
over.
couldn't hit shot, and then they couldn't hit shots against an Arkansas team that had no business making the Sweet 16. As much as I love Calipari, you guys know I'm a UMass fan, but that team wasn't good. And that's no shade at Kansas, but I don't know. Well, that's no another story for another time. But St. John's, I'm not really in on them. Bryce Hopkins, who knows how he'll be. I really like Josiah Sellers, though. Don't know why. I don't know what it was with me and Stanford, but I always found myself watching Stanford basketball games last year. There's no real reason behind it. It's just they were always on, and I was always not doing anything. And I always thought like this team should be good this year, and then they just weren't. So maybe I was wrong and just developed a little bit of a fandom for Stanford. But I really hope Isaiah Sellers pans out. He was a highly rated recruit coming out of high school, played at USC, didn't really figure it out there. Kind of broke through at Stanford last year, and hopefully he'll be a nice piece for Rick Pitino. But I'm just obviously the big storyline is how Bryce Hopkins will fare, having not really played since he tearing his ACL in January of 24 against while he's playing for Providence. So very interesting to see if Bryce Hopkins can return to form.
We're gonna get right into this next team because they're my favorite team in college basketball, and I'm not even Mormon. BYU. This is a buy, 100%. I would buy millions of stock on this team. BYU is a top 3 team in the country, and I don't even know why Borzello has them at 6. Richie Saunders, AJ DeBansta, Keba Keita, and Rob Wright. That's a recipe for buckets. I'm buying BYU.
I think I have to buy BYU. I'm maybe not as high on, I'm definitely not as high on them when you are as you are because I think Debanza, while being super talented, is gonna have some struggles in college that may be more.
What struggles?
I don't know. I think
Because
he
he hasn't struggled at any step of his career whatsoever.
Yeah, he also has just played high school ball. Like college is different. The
And
Big 12
US
helps with that.
U19 was the MVP of that entire tournament, like that entire camp.
Yeah. I don't know if he has the I don't know. I'm not a fan of his personality. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Just
Okay.
he's one of the guys who you watch him and he's always complaining. I think he forces things a little bit, and I think he's gonna have a moment when he plays Big 12 defenses where things aren't gonna come as easy for him as they have in every step of the way along the way. It's more it's more of I think Peterson is better, and I don't know why Debance is one over Peterson, and that's maybe a little Kansas bias. But yeah, I mean I think BYU is great. Rob Wright is great. Richie Saunders is really fun. But yeah, yeah, I'll buy BYU. I'm not trying to hate. I'm just saying.
I'll buy him too. My just biggest gripe with them is I don't know where their defense is going to come from because Robert Wright and Kennard Davis, they'll give you 40 maybe combined points tonight, but who knows how they're going to defend. Richie Saunders, I'd say, is a below average defender. Kevin is good in the restricted area and around the rim, but other than that, he can't really stretch the floor. And like Sam said, Devance's never played college basketball, and I've seen Devance play a lot in my couple. Those of you guys don't know, I grew up like 4 minutes from AJ Devance, so I've seen him play. He was always a hot commodity around where I'm from, and impossible to get close. And but again, he's playing Massachusetts high school basketball, so it's not the same as playing Houston, playing Kansas. So it's just interesting to see. But obviously, I'm rooting for AJ. I don't. I kind of get where people come with the personality. I was listening to talk radio the other day where him and his dad were on. I kind of am interested to see how he fares when he has to actually answer questions. And this is completely on non basketball related, but when he doesn't have his dad by his side, he has to sit down, face reporters, and with the hype around this BYU team, there's going to be a lot of press following them. Like they play at Boston Garden, they play at the Madison Square Garden. Like they're playing at the highest level of arenas in America. So he's going to have to face the bright lights, and he really hasn't had to because his dad's kind of been there. And I've met his dad. His dad's a very, and I think the reason I went to BYU is because they're a very Christian family. His dad's from Congo, his mom's from Jamaica, so they have values of what BYU is all about. So like all that off the court basketball stuff. But I'm just really interested to see how he handles those bright lights. Playing the Dukes of the world, the Kansases of the world, when he has to face it, and his dad can't really bail him out of it. So it'll be interesting. I think it's more like a mindset thing. But I think this team has the opportunity to make a really deep run. But it's going to fall on the shoulders of a 17, 18-year-old kid that's never really experienced this. It's not like you're on social media anymore. You're playing Duke, you're playing North Carolina, you're playing Kansas at Madison Square Garden. So it's just, you can't really prepare for that stuff until you actually start playing. So I'm going to buy this team, but I think, they have some flaws, and it really just starts on the defensive end.
That's a lot of truth to that. I think you're dropping lore on us. I didn't know AJ DeBanco was from Massachusetts until about a few months ago.
Oh,
And
he's from probably like 5 blocks from where I
he's
live.
from not Brockton.
Brockton.
Brockton?
Brockton.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
was.
So
He grew up
I
close to
live
my
on the
roommate.
I live on the Abington Brockton line. So
Yeah.
right on the border. So yeah,
Gosh, you're so close to AJ DeBanco, you could almost touch him.
he was
Next,
he was in town last week too, and it was like some big deal. But now he's gone. He's back in Utah. But
well, that makes some sense. Next is the Creighton Blue Jays Suns, the Louisville Cardinals. Louisville was one of the sleepers of the ACC. I don't think anyone really saw them necessarily as high as they finished a season ago, but Louisville, an extremely fun team to watch last year and had a very good offseason. This is a Louisville team that I think could be pretty solid. I'm a big fan of Isaac McNeely and Michael Brown, but I still have some questions. I'm gonna hesitantly buy Louisville to compete towards the top of the ACC, but in terms of postseason success, I would probably sell them.
Yeah, I think it's a really good transfer portal class. I like Isaac McNeely, Ryan Conwell, watching him. was really fun. It's a team that can really score, is what it looks like it's going to be. I think Pat Kelsey's a great coach. Keyshawn Pryor was really good before he got hurt. I think it's a good team. I like Pat Kelsey. I'll buy them. They'll compete in the top two, three of the ACC again. And yeah, Pat Kelsey's the right guy for the job there for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like this team. I'll buy them as well. I agree with you guys. I don't think they're a national championship contender, but I think the ACC is kind of down and they really rebuilt their roster after having a good season after the disaster of Kenny Payne when he ran the show. But I've always, I'm not to get like biased here, but I'm not a huge Pat Kelsey guy. It's not really his like coaching style. I think he's an awesome coach, but he kind of did UMass dirty back in the day, so kind of hold that grudge a little bit when he was at Winthrop at the time and kind of curved UMass in a not so nice way. But that's the beauty of the industry is he didn't create that way of coaching. It is what it is. But I like this team a lot. I like Hadley. I think Ryan Conwell is going to be awesome at Louisville just because that guy can score the hell out of the ball. And we saw it at Xavier. He was probably their best scorer last year. But I think this Louisville team is going to be a lot of fun. I think they can play with Duke. They can play with North Carolina. I think there'll be a lot of fun in the ACC this year.
The next team, the Michigan Wolverines, who Ken Palm, I think, had ranked one of the best teams in college basketball, and I think the best team in the Big Ten ahead of Purdue. I'm gonna sell Michigan. Dusty May's a winner wherever he goes, and I don't necessarily think they're gonna be bad. They're gonna be a solid team. They're not gonna be top 10 good. I think Yaxel is one of the best players in college basketball, and he hasn't even worn a Michigan jersey in a game. I'm not sold on Roddy Gale. I'm not. And he had a very average year at Michigan a year ago, and he's back when a lot of Michigan fans were calling for him to leave. And then Elliot Cadeau. He can't score very well. He's a great pure point guard. But is that what this Michigan team needs? I guess I don't know. But I'm going to go on the verge of selling Michigan just because I don't think that they're a top 10 team in the country.
Yeah, Michigan's interesting because I trust Dusty May a whole lot. Obviously, having one of the best players in the country in Lindeborg. Another team that seems really front court focused, again with Morris Johnson. Last year they obviously had Vlad and Danny Wolf. It's a different combination, but another really strong one. And, that last year Michigan team kind of missed out on having a true point guard. They had their struggles with that. And I think Cadeau brings them a lot of what maybe May is searching for. And I think just out of trusting May, I think the roster is good enough. I'll buy Michigan. I like the fit there.
I'm going to buy it too. I think Michigan, in my opinion, is one of the best teams in the country. I really like Dusty May. I've campaigned for that Kansas. He should be Kansas's first call when, if Bill Self eventually does retire. So the Axel is my favorite transfer in this year's transfer portal class because my biggest problem with this team is I don't know where their second option is going to come from scoring wise. Namari Burnett's really struggled with injuries. He's had some knee injuries in the past. Elliot Cadeau just hasn't been a consistent scorer throughout his college career. And Roddy Gale just is really hit or miss when it comes to shooting the ball. And Morez Johnson is one of my favorite pure centers, but he's not a guy you'll rely on to score the ball. So you're going to really need Roddy Gale to play well after coming in from the rival Ohio State, and Namari Burnett to try and return to form after he's battled some knee injuries while he was at Alabama and Texas Tech. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I think Dusty May is a top 5 coach in the sport, and I'm really excited to see what he does with another, powerhouse player in Axel Lendeborg, who could very well be a lottery pick in next year's NBA draft.
That brings us to Borzello's number 9 team in the country, the Kentucky Wildcats. I'm going to buy this team. I think Pope had a lot to prove coming from BYU to Kentucky last year when he did. I mean, he was a college basketball coach who has never won an NCAA tournament game. I think most people did not have Kentucky contending in the SEC near the top where they did. I think a lot of people would have projected Kentucky to have a little bit more of a fall off after Calipari leaving, and then you just kind of watched what Pope did, and he worked with what he had, and he made do, and he did good things. He did great things there. Um, yeah, I'm gonna trust Pope. I really like the addition of Jaden Quintons from Arizona State. Obviously, I think he's coming back from injury. So we're gonna have to see how that works, how that plays out. But I really like Otega Owe, and I really do think Mark Pope is one heck of a basketball coach.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna sell Kentucky here. I like Pope. I think he's the right man for the Kentucky job, obviously. Quentin's tore his ACL in late February. They have him as a projected starter. I don't know if you can recover from an ACL necessarily that quickly. I mean, maybe he will be healthy and that's fine.
You could. I mean,
Yeah.
you have top tier genes, but I don't know about Jaden Quinton's. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if they can guarantee his health. And that was a big thing when, he entered the portal. I was like, looking at his potential fit at Kansas, and it's like, I don't know if you can guarantee that he'll be ready for the start of the year. I like Otega Owe, getting him back is big. I think some of the pieces around him are just kind of eh. So I don't know. I'm gonna sell Kentucky on the contingency that Quaintons may not be healthy at the start of the year.
I'm also going to sell Kentucky for the same exact reason Sam
Jeez.
did. I,
I'm just trying to be
I'm just
different, I guess.
well, I don't know where Quaintance will be at following an injury. I like Denzel Aberdeen. He was a big part of a Florida team that won a title, but I don't really like him as a starter. I think he's kind of just a good energy guy coming off the bench, and I think he's fun in that role. And then Otego away, we saw what he did last year. He'll be a consistent scorer and a consistent, weapon on the offensive end of the floor. But I think Jalon Lowe, I don't know if he is. I just think he kind of took advantage of not really having a second option at Pittsburgh last year. I think Ish Leggett was their second option, where so Lowe had the ball in his hands on like pretty much every opportunity. Where I think it'll be Owe for the most part this year. So I'm going to sell them. I just don't know if I'm all that high on Kentucky being ranked number 9. But they're a tournament team. It's Kentucky, but I just don't know if they're enough top 10 team in the country. So I'm going to go with Sam and sell.
That's fine. I guess I'm just trying to be different. And we were gonna do top 25, but
I'm at 10.
realistically,
Yeah.
we'll cut it off at 10. The last team that we're going to talk about right now is the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And I really was looking towards their offseason. I think they started off really hot by bringing back JT Toppin. However, I'm going to sell this team. I'm not super impressed with what they were kind of able to do towards the end. Um, I really think losing out on Darion Williams is just going to hurt them quite a bit. And this is a team that, what was it? Elite Eight? They made the Elite Eight. So I don't think they're going to be able to get back to that success. JT Toppin's going to have a terrific year in the Big 12. I think he could win Big 12 Player of the Year. But I'm not sold that this is a Texas Tech team that is top 10 in the country.
Yeah, I'm conflicted here because I love Grant McCasland as a coach. I think he should be Kansas's first call when Self hangs it up. And obviously they have the probably the best one of the best players in the Big 12 and in the country in JT Toppin. Christian Anderson was a pretty big piece of that team. And obviously these portal additions maybe are under the radar a little bit, but that's what they were last year for the most part. I mean, Toppin was a pretty big name at that point. But, there are some guys that kind of flew under the radar that had really big seasons. I like McCasland. I like their system. I think he's a great coach. So I think, based off my love for Grant McCasland, I can't sell Texas Tech, so I just have to buy him.
Yeah, I'm in the same predicament because I don't want to pick against Grant McCaslin, but I also don't think I love this team. I love Christian Anderson. I think Christian Anderson's awesome. I think for being as undersized of a guard as he is, he had an awesome freshman season for Texas Tech. And he played, obviously their two guards were hurt for a lot of the majority of the season, like back end of the season. So Anderson really stepped up. He, made some big plays in the tournament, the Big 12 tournament, late in the regular season. But I think the big story of this team is going to be the two guys that are projected to start at the 2 and 3, Donovan Atwell from UNC Greensboro and Lawan Watts from Washington State. Because you lost Darren Williams, who was arguably your best player, right? JT Toppin had an awesome season, but Darren Williams won you pretty much every tournament game that you won. So you're going to need those guys to be consistent shooters. And Atwell's an awesome shooter. I think one of the best in the transfer portal class. But I think it all falls on Lawan Watts, who was at Washington State last year, shot 42% from deep. And I think the big issue, though, is going to be their front court depth. You have JT Toppin, but after that, you don't really have much going on. You have Luke Bamgoy, who averaged under 4 points per game for a VCU team that I think was okay. I wasn't huge on VCU. They just kind of took advantage of an underwhelming Atlantic 10 last year, which included my UMass Minutemen. But I don't know. I don't think I'm going to sell Texas Tech just because I don't think they have the depth. Losing, Darian Williams, who could have, like I said, been the Big 12 Player of the Year. if he wasn't playing, with JT Toppin. But I love Christian Anderson and Toppin. I just don't. You're relying a lot on Atwell and Watts, who haven't played high level Big 12 basketball in their career. So I'm going to sell Texas Tech.
Well, there you go. That is our buy or sell top 10. Jeff Borzello, ESPN, top 25. Before we go, we don't have a whole lot of time left. Before we go, I want everybody's final four predictions. This is really early final four predictions. So by the time we come back to this in the spring, these could be horrifically wrong. Does anyone want to start real quick? We don't really need explanations. I feel like for most of these teams that we're going to kind of go with, we've kind of talked about a little bit. Does anyone want to start us off?
I can lead it off. Might as well.
Yeah, lead us off.
But my Final Four I said Purdue. I think they're going to win it all, but it's Purdue, Houston, Michigan, and USC. I really love USC. They're kind of my dark horse team that I think not enough people are talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I have some of those similar teams. Sam, you can go first.
Yeah, yeah. I have Purdue, I have Houston. I like NC State. Again, I just think dynamite coach and Will Wade and a really good portal class. I'm struggling to find a fourth one here that I really feel confident in. But yeah, I'll go with Michigan. I like Michigan. I think, Dusty May is just the guy, and I think really good coaches can help you win in March. And there are four really good coaches there with the teams that I picked.
Yeah, I think coaching plays a big part. I mean, we saw Florida get their first national championship since what year was that? Oh nine, James?
Oh, seven,
07.
oh,
Oh
seven. They went oh
seven
six and oh seven
with
back to
with
back.
Billy
Yeah.
Donovan. So it's like, I mean, Todd Golden, that's what good coaching can do, and they had it for sure. And good coaching does help you win games. My final four, I'm Purdue, right? Purdue has been in all of ours. Houston's going to be in all of ours, just because I think those two teams are deserving of the one and two spots. Um, I think that they should be the AP number one and number two come the first week where AP drops out. I think that they're the two most talented teams in the country. And then my dark horse team is going to be the Creighton Blue Jays, just because I actually do think sometimes it is the year after it was supposed to be the year after it was supposed to be the year. So I am sold on this team. Josh Dix is a playmaker. If Owen Freeman can be 7/10 of what Ryan Kolkbrenner is, I think that this team's ceiling is actually really high with Blake Harper. I'm excited, and Fedor got cleared again. So the Creighton bandwagon is so back on. And then my last team is BYU. I mean, it couldn't be anybody else. I wake up smiling thinking of AJ DeBansa and BYU playing basketball. I can't I'm just so excited to watch BYU. Why are you looking at me like that, Sam?
I can't believe this Creighton Glaze has made this here all the way to the Final Four. That's nuts.
They could still do it. There actually is a realistic possibility they can do it.
I think
Okay.
the BYU Glaze is
No,
worse.
the BYU Glaze may be worse. Yeah.
The BYU glazing is
This is just
not.
random. This
Uh-huh.
is random.
It's not random. I'm gonna be partially Mormon this year. That is how excited I am to watch BYU play. I will not be doing anything on Sundays. Sundays
Good
are my off days.
good luck with that.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I
What do you
think
normally do on Sundays?
nothing because I'm going to be just watching AJ DeBansa BYU highlights probably.
There you go.
Do you guys
Good
know
answer.
AJ DeBansa has a YouTube channel?
I didn't know that, but I don't know if I'll tune in.
You should.
How's the content, Jack? You seem to know all about it.
It's pretty good content, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Love learning more about the future number one overall pick. I mean, gosh, he's just BYU.
I'd like to see my Celtics tank for AJ or Darren. Whoever it is.
I'm actually genuinely super excited to watch Darren Peterson and AJ DeBansa both in the Big 12. So I think that's really good for the conference, and I'm excited. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys joining me for the first episode of season number two of The Birdcage. Any final thoughts from either of you two?
The glaze is out of this world, Jack, just in general. But I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
We'll see
I'll be
about that.
back hopefully.
Maybe I'll be right. Maybe I'm gonna be right.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll
Also,
see.
the only redeemable quality about the Rockies is that hat. It's a pretty fire hat. But
That's a good
other than
hat.
that, not
Well,
much going on.
I appreciate that. We did have an all-star, so
Everyone has an all-star.
Yeah, it's true. He did have an all-star, Jack.
we'll get out of here, Sam. Alrighty, you guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your evening to come talk to me. It's really late where you are, James.
Oh yeah, I got work
So,
in 6 hours. That'll be fun.
oh my gosh. So I
I'm back on
appreciate
I'm
you.
back on the janitor grind, so
There you go.
making money,
I appreciate
trying at
you
least.
taking the time to talk to me, Sam. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I know you have people waiting to get your attention, so I will let you guys both go. Thank you guys for joining me, and we will see you guys on the next episode of The Birdcage.